Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Cannabis Tech Talks. With me today is Josh Crossney, President, CEO, and founder of CSC Events. So you're best known for the Cannabis Science Conference. And you've been a great partner of Cannabis and Tech today since the start. We really appreciate it. And you're doing such awesome work. So I'm thrilled to sit down with you and hear about the next conference coming up. It's in February 2nd through the 4th. Is that right?
Yep, that's absolutely right. And it's great to join you today. And I've always loved working with you and the team at Cannabis and Tech today. And I want to say, I think I was your first podcast guest ever back
Yeah.
when we filmed in MJ Biz in New Orleans.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a while. When was that? Was that 2019?
um, so that was cool. So I think that might have been 2018 or maybe 2019, but it's great to be back with you and to sit here today. And we're really excited about our upcoming conference. And we have traditionally hosted our West Coast show in Portland, Oregon, but we're kind of following the numbers of attendees coming from where they're coming from, and California is kind of where it's at. So we're really excited that we're moving our West Coast show to Long Beach, California this year to join in on the largest legal cannabis market in the world.
Yeah, that's a great demographic. And they're doing a lot of cool stuff with science. I was just speaking with Nadav Eyal from ABNA. I think I'm saying that right. The terpene technology
Yep.
company. They're doing
Yep.
such cool stuff. And he was saying that California is one of his most interested markets as far as the science that they're putting out.
Absolutely. And Nadav is a great friend of mine in the show. He's actually one of our presenters for the upcoming show.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, before we dive into all the great speakers and content that you're going to have at the show, maybe you can tell our audience a little bit about how did you become interested in cannabis science? I mean, it's such a niche, and I think everybody's kind of origin story is always interesting to hear. Tell us about yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before I got into the cannabis industry, I was doing staffing and recruiting for the analytical science community. And specific, not cannabis at all at the time, but some of the people I was working with, their brands, and they were starting to kind of slowly get involved with cannabis. So I'm a firm believer in knowing what you're good at and trying to do that in life. So I before entering the industry, I really wanted to take the time to look at my skill set, look what I had going on, where my contacts were. And really, going back to 2014, 2015 is when I entered the industry. And like you said, science is like a niche, but like even more so then, you look at markets like California going back that time, there wasn't even requirements for quality control testing for cannabis, although it had been legal for medical purposes since 1996. So, obviously, I'm a big proponent that, cannabis inherently is safe. No one has ever died of a direct overdose of cannabis, but testing for quality control is one of the most important aspects of, this whole industry and really any industry, and when I looked at, the work that I was doing at the time, placing candidates in, environmental labs, food safety labs, basically anything that comes into contact with humans that's regulated is tested for quality control. So, one of the things with that is obviously you want to, when you're trying to target treat certain conditions, you want a certain cannabinoid ratio to, really hit those conditions hard. But also it's about contamination and other things like human error when in cultivation. So obviously if there's mold or pesticides or things like that present, that's not great for someone who's immunocompromised. And especially when you put that through an extraction process, if there is contamination present, you could potentially be extracting not just the cannabinoids to a more potent level, but also the contaminants that are present in the sample to a more potent level. So really, I just got in the industry because I really wanted to help. And like I said, use my skill set and bring in some of the contacts that we were working with and some of the brands. And really, very quickly in my journey, like almost immediately, I connected with some families who were dealing with pediatric illness like cancer and epilepsy and autism. And the pediatric element really became at that point, additional kind of avenue for me to really advocate and help these kids, because what we saw at the time and even still now is, if you're in a market where cannabis is legal medically or recreationally for, different ailments and conditions, no one really has a problem with that. But when you add the pediatric element into the conversation, some people start to get a little like, well, you're giving this to children. And it's like, well, in traditional healthcare, we're giving children, benzos, opiates, chemotherapy, radiation. So,
Mhm.
I'm also a firm believer in, fact, evidence-based science. So I don't go around saying, cannabis cures this or cannabis heals that. I think that there's a lot of potential there. I think we definitely have, some more work to do. But like I said, I do think there's potential there. But one thing we know is that cannabis definitely helps these kids with the symptoms of things like chemotherapy and radiation, and being able to maintain a resemblance of a life when going through some of these devastating things. So for me, I've been passionate and about cannabis as like a consumer or patient or whatever you want to call it for many years. And really, I never would have thought, back in the 90s and early 2000s that like this is what I'd be doing for my career. But it's really cool to, go from something, that you might have did recreationally as a teenager to like, this is what we do now. This is our career. And, we're helping people, we're helping spread information and education. And really, that's the name of the game for us.
And when did the science conference start?
So we launched our first edition of Cannabis Science Conference in October of 2016. Like I said before, in Portland, Oregon. And then we kind of grew the show year after year, kind of doubled in size each time at the Oregon Convention Center there. And then in 2019, we had grown so much. And, really one of the things that's interesting is I actually live in Baltimore, Maryland. So sometimes people are like, what? You live on the East Coast? Because I'm always, everywhere traveling. But when we launched the show, like I said, preparing in 2015 for a 2016 launch, the East Coast didn't have much of markets to speak of. So when you do conferences like we do, and I'm sure you can relate, in the publishing field, is when you're trying to do something, yes, it's all about the education and information sharing, but you also need to bring in the industry support to help you enable you to do that. So obviously that comes into like play with the exhibit hall and the sponsors and things. And it's really hard to, almost impossible to pull sponsors for an event on, the East Coast when there wasn't anything going on. So we kind of knew we had to kind of pack our bags and take this dream out west. But it was really exciting over the few years that we have been in Oregon leading up to 2019, how really there was like a medical cannabis revolution on the East Coast where kind of state after state had brought on medical programs, and some had went to adult use programs as well in that time. So we kind of thought to ourselves like, hey, we should be doing this back home where we live too. So it was really a great feeling to launch our East Coast edition. So in 2019, we actually hosted our CSC West in Portland, Oregon at the Oregon Convention Center, which was fabulous. You guys were there. We did some interviews with Chuck and the team, with some of our speakers. We had Olivia Newton-John was there with her husband as our keynote speaker. And then we did our Baltimore show. So, like I said, 2019, and then cut to 2020, we really, hit the same kind of wall that a lot of other event organizers hit. And, we're kind of, inclined to take a pause. That being said, we did put out some webinars. We tried to keep the educational content flowing without actually being in person. And then we were really excited. We finally were able to get back at things with our Cannabis Science Conference East that was in this past September. So obviously still not, perfect timing. We obviously took a lot of safety precautions to make sure everyone was safe, masks were required, everything like that. But it was really nice to finally get back together with our community after so long. So we're really excited. We in September of this year, we were able to pull, I think, just over 1,000 attendees and somewhere around 70 to 75 vendors. So, that was down obviously a little bit from 2019, which, is never fun. But, given the circumstances, we were really excited to safely reconvene and to start that trajectory back up.
Yeah, what a journey. I remember we spoke in 2020, I think maybe toward the middle or end of the year, and we're kind of talking about the impacts of the pandemic and how you had been traveling so much leading up to it, in 2019, that you were kind of fatigued, and in a way, when it started, you were like, all right, I'll catch my breath. But then of course, just like everyone else, we realized the gravity of it, and how long, like, enduring it was going to be. I think we were all kind of in the club like, man, when the Tiger King days, like, this wasn't going to
Right.
be going on for much
Right.
longer. And then, yeah, here we are. in going into 2022. But I was thinking about how much the science has changed since 2016. You
Yes.
I imagine that the content you're sharing with people must be radically different than when you started. Is that what you're
Yes.
finding is like huge advances in what you get to share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been so much, evolution, like you said, since 2016. And, when we launched in 2016, we originally did one track, which was just kind of, mostly analytical science, so the testing and extractions, but also mixed in a little bit of the medical information in there. And there was such great, feedback and attendance. At our first show in 2016, we had about 800 people. So, for our first show, and, to put into context, when we were planning the show, we had went through 3 other venues before that first show because we had plateaued them in size. And, the first time that happened, we were almost a whole year out from the show. So I'm like, I'm not going to say, oh, we're sold out a year before the show. So we had to go out and find other venues. But then after the first show, we did add the secondary medical cannabis track. So, like I said, the analytical is the testing, the extractions, all the research and regulations in those fields. And then we added the medical cannabis track that was, the doctors, the nurses, the patient stories, sharing information about geriatrics with cannabis, pediatrics with cannabis, having world's leading researchers come and share that medical information. Having things like pediatric parents panels that actually come and share their experiences of what it's like, being a parent treating a pediatric child that's, suffering with cancer or another condition, and, the ups and downs, the good, bad, and ugly of everything that comes with that. Because I think, with awareness becomes change. So, making sure people are aware that, folks like that are out there, I think is really important. And then the year after that, in 2018, we launched our cultivation science track, which is just like it sounds, all the science behind, growing and cultivating the plant. And we've had great, amazing people, over the years presenting that track. And then in 2019, we actually added our hemp CBD specific track because we found that after the Farm Bill, a lot of the hemp and CBD brands kind of wanted to have, specific things that were catered, specifically to hemp and CBD, and not kind of mixed in with everything. So, obviously we had covered that over the years in our other tracks, but we thought that it would be good, if that was specifically, the type of business you were in, and the information you were looking to learn, you could come just to that one specific track. So that was really great. And then, one thing I'm really excited about for the Long Beach show is we are launching our 5th educational track, which is psychedelic science, which I don't know how much you guys have looked into that, but from where I'm sitting, it's really happening very quickly. And compared to going back to what feels like the dark ages of 2014, 2015 in cannabis, they're really taking a medical approach to the psychedelics and the assisted therapies and things like that. So I really see that moving almost more rapidly than we saw movement even with cannabis back when. So I really feel there's a whole lot of potential in that market, and we've got some great speakers lined up for our psychedelic launch.
I love that. It is fascinating to hear how psychedelics are advancing, and they're even starting to create some product lines around isolated
Yep.
elements of the mushrooms, and doing other cool stuff with mushrooms, even non psychedelics. Like Burner released his caps line, of it's like a lion's mane and a lot of other
Yep.
cool stuff blended with cannabinoids. So I am thrilled that they're taking a more scientific approach than maybe we started with cannabis. So I'm sure you're going to get a killer turnout for that track.
Yeah, no, and it's come together so nicely. And one thing that was really important to us with putting together the psychedelic track is to keep in mind that yes, we're about the science and the research and discovering all these great things, but with cannabis the same thing. But like especially with psychedelics, what we're seeing, it's not just about the science. You also need to remember the roots of where this medicine comes from, and this is sacred ancient medicine. You know what I mean? That the Native Americans and others have really been the gatekeepers of this knowledge and this medicine for many, many, many years. So we're really excited because, like I said, we are a science conference. So we have people like Dr. Allison Drazen from the Ames Institute is going to be giving a presentation. on assisted ketamine therapy. She's doing a lot of work with that. We have AC Braddock coming, and she usually has spoken in our extractions track and the analytical track about cannabis, but she's doing a lot of work with extracting water soluble psychedelics down to where it limits, nausea and things like that. But then we also have people like Davina Smith, who is a leader in the Native American community, who actually organized a 360-mile prayer run from Salt Lake City, Utah to Bears Ears National Monument in Utah, collecting sacred medicine along the way. That was, their indigenous medicine, really to bring awareness to the Bears Ears land reduction, which, if your audience isn't familiar with that, I would definitely give that a Google, the Bears Ears monument land reduction, because there was kind of a situation where Obama had given back a lot of this land to the Native Americans. But then when Trump came in, he kind of took some of that back, and it's kind of been a back and forth. So that was one of the issues she was raising awareness around, and as well as missing indigenous women and other, really important issues to her community. And then we have people like Bernadette and Mino, who are like shamanic tobacco healers that really, get into like the ceremonial kind of like point of view of, doing psychedelics and how things like that, like sacred tobacco is, an experience of its own, but also interacts with other journeys like ayahuasca and other things. So like I said, we're really excited because that track is really a good combination of, the new and developing science, but also, like I said, honoring and lifting up the voices of the gatekeepers of this medicine, and really, getting them together to learn from each other.
Wow. That's so comprehensive. I really appreciate those different viewpoints and being able to share them in a scientific setting. I think that's
Yep.
valuable and probably wildly underdone, underrepresented. So well played. I think that's really
Thank you.
exciting.
Thank
So
you.
you've got this is coming up in February, and then what are you looking at down the road? What's coming next for you?
Yeah, so we like I said, we're really looking to get back to our two show a year model. The way that timing worked out, with the pandemic in 2021, we were just able to get out the one show, the Baltimore show in September. And it's interesting because the way that timing worked, our shows kind of flip flopped when they would be held. So typically, when we did the show in September, that would have been our West Coast show kind of time. But like I said, I mean, we're not picky about when we do it. We were just excited to get back out there. So obviously, we have February 2nd through 4th in Long Beach is the next big thing we have coming up. But we're also in the planning phases of our East Coast show. That would likely be sometime in late summer, early fall of 2022.
Okay, that's awesome. And for those who want to learn more about it
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully attend, tons of great content. Where can they go to learn more about what you're doing and kind of keep following the journey of the Cannabis Science Conference?
Yeah, absolutely. So they can check out cannabisscienceconference.com, and we have a lot of great info there, including the agenda and speaker information. So you can scroll through and see all of our speakers and content, and also check out, the bios of who's speaking. It's great because it's really simple on our website. You can kind of pick the whole agenda, or you can filter through the specific tracks you're trying to find out more information about. On all social media, at Cannabis Science Conference, except for Twitter, that's at CannabisSciCon. We're just, like I said, we're just really excited to be finally getting back out there. And we had such a great turnout in Baltimore for the time it was. And we're just really excited. We have some legendary folks coming to join us for keynotes, like Ed Rosenthal, who I'm sure all your listeners are familiar with. Ed, the guru of ganja, and Jeff
That's awesome.
Lowenfels, who are both cultivation, leaders in the field. We have Dr. Denise Vidot from the University of Miami, who actually spoke on our Baltimore show about her cannabis research, but will be speaking in Long Beach about her psychedelic research. We have great speakers like Amazon John Easterling that'll be speaking in our medical cannabis track, who's actually Olivia Newton-John's husband. They've been great friends to our show for many years. And he typically would speak in our cultivation track over the years. But this year he's going to be doing a talk on our medical track and just talking a little bit about, his process and what he does to help with, his own family and the issues that they're dealing with and using cannabis for. So it's really great. We're excited to get back out there, and it's great to be working with Cannabis and Tech today again.
Yeah, we're thrilled to talk with you. Um, are there any, maybe closing thoughts or final takeaways you want to share with our audience before we wrap it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just like to say, to everyone that, knowledge is power, and empowered patients or consumers make, good decisions about their health and what they're doing. And, our show is primarily B2B. You know what I mean? A lot of our tracks do kind of focus on that. But our medical cannabis track is really great for the patients and consumers to really just learn more about why, cannabis helps with this or that. And, it's interesting because a lot of people don't even realize that they're using cannabis for, a medical, reason until you do. Myself, I use it for anxiety and other issues. And, as like I said, a teenager earlier, I didn't realize that that was something that was helping me. But now I know more information, and I do know that that is what helps with my anxiety. So I would just say, I really encourage everybody to get out there and check out the show, and really come and show up, participate, and network and learn. We have some of the world's leading experts coming together, and we also pair it with a very robust and busy exhibition floor, so you can come and network and build your brand in that way as well. So we just hope everybody considers joining us in Long Beach for our first California edition.
I think that's a great addition, Josh. I always think of Melissa Etheridge. I spoke with her. She said, cannabis is medicine whether you realize it or not. And I think, she said she's gotten some backlash for saying that from people, but I feel like that's more true than we realize. Most people are using it for something, even if it's something that they're not consciously aware of. And even these B2B events and
Yes,
B2B content can feel maybe exclusionary to consumers. But I think there's so much to learn
sure.
from these events, whether you're in the industry or not. It's shedding light on the science, on the processes, and what really goes into making this a consumer safe product, which I think everyone could benefit from learning about. So I appreciate that perspective a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And when yeah, and talking about Melissa Etheridge, I actually got the chance to meet her in Canada a few years ago, and I totally agree, with that. And one of the things that you'll learn a lot about in our show, especially in the medical track, is the endocannabinoid system. A lot of people, obviously people in our industry, like you, I'm sure know, but a lot of people, just don't understand that we all have this system in our bodies that does interact with the cannabinoids in cannabis. And that being balanced is a very important part of homeostasis and
Yeah.
health. So we're really just passionate about getting that education out there as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm so glad. It's great work. And I'm just thrilled to see how it keeps developing, and I'm so grateful that in-person events are back and that you can do it safely. So for everyone out there listening, be sure to check out the Cannabis Science Conference West in Long Beach. That's taking place February 2nd through the 4th. And for all of our listeners, if you enjoy hearing about emerging science and technology in the cannabis space, be sure to follow us, Cannabis Tech Talks, on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts, and pick up our newest issue on newsstands now. Otherwise, I think that will wrap it up for Josh Crossney and myself, Patricia Miller. Thanks for joining us, and we will catch you next time.
Today's episode of Cannabis and Tech Talks is brought to you by Enlighten. Enlighten helps companies in the cannabis space better understand, navigate, and reach customers throughout the entire customer journey. Enlighten's team of technologists, data analysts, and marketing professionals provide technology solutions and marketing services so clients can identify, attract, and retain new customers and unlock new opportunities that will increase profitability and help them gain competitive advantages in the market. Enlighten also supports small and emerging brands in the market with a simple and effective self-service platform called AdSuite. To learn more about Enlighten and everything they have to offer, go to getenlightened.io.